Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I met some really crazy people, but I mean, sometimes they're crazy in a way that you sort of think you back off and you make a run for it is what you do.
Right.
And then the rest of them are the kind of crazy people that you just really want to hang with because they're fun and they got nutty ideas, but then you think, yeah, but that could be it could be fun.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's,
When I was
it's one of those mixes. Yeah.
Speaking of fun, I mean, when I was doing my research, you and I spoke a couple years ago, Angus, but I went back into the whammy bin here. You've been in you were in the Black Dahlia, you were in Witness, you were in all these different things that I've watched over the years and really enjoyed.
I've been really, really, really lucky. I mean, I wouldn't, I mean, nobody can say I'm not a star, but I mean, I have always considered myself to be a supporting actor.
Mm-hmm.
And but I've been really lucky. I mean, I've run into gigs that most people would say would die and think they died and went to heaven to do. And then and I was young. A lot of them, I was young and stupid, and I just sort of thought, oh, that's pretty cool. I'm not doing that. It's just and I look back on it now and I think, hey, I worked with Burt Lancaster. It's like, hello. Burt Lancaster, for Christ's sakes, and then every once in a while I sort of rub my temples and think, Burt Lancaster, it's really weird. I mean, sometimes you just go, yeah, cool. That's really, I mean, yeah, like really, it's really odd feeling because I had to beat him up in this movie, and I remember coming on the set and I was like, this young actor, and I was like, yeah, I don't know how you're doing. Yeah. And then it's Burt Lancaster, so he's got his hair whited out, and he looks like a really old guy, like I am now. And so we have this sort of fight thing that goes on, and so I go, and I grab him and I throw him against the wall, and he stopped and he looked at me and he said, "Is that all you got, kid?"
Oh wow,
boy!
And I said, you want more? And he said, look, if we're gonna do this, okay? Let's not fuck around.
Right.
And it was so I said, okay, fine, and we went for it. And it was just, he said, that's better. It's like, and I was just amazed by him. He was just such a nice guy, and he was, there was a situation that happened on the picture. I'll tell you this because it's a really interesting story. The kind of guy he was. He had a hair guy. The movie was a French and France, Canada, and co-production, right? Mm-hmm. But it was French Canadian and French guys. And we had this hairdresser for Burt Lancaster, who was this young guy I think he was from Montreal, and so he was on the movie for like 4 weeks. And we had the party one night. And this young hairdresser came in. He was a really nice young guy. He was about 23, 24, 25, around there. And he came up to Burt Lancaster and he said, "Can I shake your hand, sir?" And he said, well, and Burt looked at him because the guys have been like doing his hair every day for like weeks. And he said, well, yeah. He says, what's wrong? He says, well, I'm leaving the production. And he said, why? He said, I've been fired. The producers don't like the work that I'm doing. Huh. He said, oh, really? He said, just a second. He walked over to the producer, and I was watching this because I was like, just a few paces away. And I got really curious. And Burt walked over to the producer and he said, come here. He said, yes, Mr. Lancaster. He said, you see the kid there? He said, yeah, he's not fired. He said, yes, Mr. Lancaster, that's fine. It's okay, kid. Off you go. Have a drink. That's the kind of guy he was. I'm not doing that. He just said, I'm not doing that. You're not doing that. That's done. And I loved him for it. I just went, that's so cool. That's great. Awesome. Really nice.
That is different than what you encountered on Star Wars. I mean, Star Wars was a very different production, right? Like, I remember reading somewhere that that Mr. Lucas wanted you to go out of sequence, and that really fouled you up, and that was a real tough shoot for you. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, but I mean, it was, I think a lot of actors, and I'm certainly one of them, that you learn sort of early on to roll with it. And so if something happens that, and a director comes along and he says, I want to do something like this, you go, yeah. I was very new then. That was only my second movie.
Mm.
And the first picture I didn't have to talk in.
That was Rollerball?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I had like two words in Rollerball. Yes, sir.
That was with James Caan, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'd done, you know, before this, I'd done like a lot of theater. I'd done a lot of Shakespeare and stuff. And talking on stage and wasn't really a problem, but
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have anything to say in Rollerball. And then I was suddenly given all this dialogue, but then George said, you've learned your lines. You just learned your lines. And I said, well, yeah, of course I've learned my lines. It's like, yeah. And he said, well, we just want you to do your lines. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, and I said, well, usually we have like a cue. And I've learned my lines with the cue. And he said, no, we don't want that. We just wanted you just to do your lines. And that's when the nightmare began, because I didn't know. He immediately threw me. And it was like I was sort of out to sea.
Right.
But, and because an actor needs another actor to go like, okay, Tommy, what do we do next? And then you got your line. And are you sure we should do that, John? I don't know. So all that sort of interchange happens, and then your ear tunes to it, and then your line is tripped by the other guy's line. Right. And when they take the other guy's line away, your lines are just hanging in space. They're not tripped by anything. There's nothing to sort of tip them over. So we just wound up reading the song. It was great fun. I mean, I'm not embarrassed about that, because one, I was young, and two, I think it's kind of interesting that you get to a point where you just understand that you have to do a job. There was a task to be done, mm-hmm. and we had a time frame, and I could see that everybody was getting a little bit tight, and I thought, let's just get out of this. And I said, let's just read this, okay? And then the acting part came in where people don't think I'm reading it.
No, you look like you're actually flying something, because you're looking around the cockpit. Everybody else is staring,
right,
sort of blankly into. But you act, of all the pilots, you look the most human, because you look like you have the most to do.
I think I was probably more scared than anybody else. You see, I mean, suddenly I was being asked. The other guys were like, probably had their shit together, but but I was so terrified. I was like, what the hell am I? What am I doing here? And where's the next line? It's here somewhere. I know it is. We should have had like big number 1, number 2, number 3. So yeah, I mean, but it was still electrifying to do. I mean, I've always been a big science fiction guy, and I really like science fiction. I've always liked it, and I read stuff that for years. I mean, I had a huge library at one point that I lost, probably 300 or 400 books, and then I've amassed more, and then I've sort of gotten rid of those. Then I dip in and out of it. I've been reading now. I've been back into it for about 5 or 6 years. So you sort of go in and out of. But I really like science fiction. I was really into it when Star Wars is being made, and I was like, oh, this is so cool. I can't stand it. It's great. Look at these ships. Everything's so dirty and, it's grimy, and it's like, and because, I mean, science fiction up until then had been like everybody wore these really clean things, and they all looked like they came to the dry cleaner. It's like, you got your new outfit on. I said, yeah, good. But we were like real human beings, and of course, I never understood why I was called Dutch, though. I mean,
yeah,
that really confuses me. It still does. It's like, how do you go to a galaxy far, far away and there's a Dutchman living there? I mean, what's that?
Well, that's a challenge now. I got to figure out why that is too, because I didn't find that. And
well, unless it's you get into the sort of many worlds sort of physics theories that say there's an infinite number of universes that are exactly the same as this one, only that it's just a little bit different.
Well, I think that's everybody's hope these days. Maybe there's some place that's not going as sideways.
Yeah.
Oh, that is
Yeah. But well, cuckoo, isn't it?
And then the speaking of cuckoo, I was tickled because I grew up. I'm older than Robin. I saw the original in the theater with my dad,
Wow,
and
cool.
so and for me, watching the trench run was like one of my first memories in ever. So to see you get reinstated and be put back into Rogue One, and I got to watch that with my son,
Oh.
and now I'm watching Angus MacInnes in Rogue One. It was such a surreal experience, but I have to say that I'm so pleased that you, in particular, because obviously everyone knows Luke, but in terms of the person that I remember the most, Gold Leader, like that's him, man. And so when you were in Rogue One, I just thought that was so cool. And my son he's waiting to watch this later. He thinks it's so neat because he knows who you are, and he's 10. And I just think that's really cool, and probably one of the best things about Star Wars, that it's generational. You find that you have younger people talking to you these days at the cons and things?
Yeah, and also, it's. I think that one thing that Rogue One did was to knit the idea of the prequel, so in a retro way, so that it segued into what the movie I did was called Star Wars. So I mean, it segues into A New Hope so seamlessly.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I've never seen one, but I've heard that there are versions that people have edited out themselves, and they've taken the end of Rogue One off and taken the beginning of New Hope off, and made a bridge. And apparently, the two movies just play together like they're the one picture. I've never seen it, but I'd be interested to see it.
Now, Robin, when did you first discover Gold Leader? Was it actually in Strange Brew?
Well, and I want to apologize ahead of time for my voice, Angus, because I was out protesting and marching yesterday. So my voice is going to do the best it can during this time. But to answer John's question in particular, I think for me, the first time I saw you on screen, in particular, wasn't just Strange Brew, even though I'm a huge hockey fan, much like John. Strange Brew, to me, the whole connection there is so cool. I was a young kid. I was a young kid when I first saw A New Hope. I was a young kid when I first saw Gold Leader on the screen, and there was just something so cool about the Y-wings and the attack runs and everything else. And it not only having you here to talk with us as well, but I think the one thing for me is, and I'll get into Strange Brew in just a second with you, but for you in that scene in particular, you described a little bit about sitting there and basically waiting for that Ben Kenobi moment, when is he going to tell me where my line is? Basically, you're hoping Ben Kenobi comes down and is like, listen to your line, listen. But I think for me, being part of the younger generation, we go to conventions, we see a lot of the people involved in the original Star Wars, including yourself. Has there been any one in particular interaction that you've had, whether with younger fans or any other fans across the board? Maybe it's 501st or Rebel Legion. Is there something that really sticks out to you in terms of your relations with the fandom?
I think, yeah. I think that the one thing that really resonates big is the 501st itself, because I have a kind of symbiotic relationship with the 501st. I have a lot of time for those guys because they everywhere I've been in the world, and I mean I haven't been but Star Wars related, in Europe and in the United States and Canada, and wherever I've gone, the 501st has been there. And every time you meet a troop, they're always involved, one garrison or the other, doesn't matter what they are, they're always involved in children's charities, and they're doing things to help kids. They're doing things, almost all of them work on cancer charities. And that just knocks me out. I mean, I cannot believe it. I can't do that kind of stuff. It makes me crazy. And to watch these guys, and I know what they do. They go in to cancer wards with kids, and they're in such desperate condition. and yet they give their time and they give their energy and they raise money. And so that's one of the things that really brought me right into the whole the whole Star Wars world, the universe, is the 501st and their commitment to kids and to giving their time. And that's really, really impressed me. And then I discovered that even the fans that aren't 501st are still of the same sort of mind state. They still have that caring and giving thing. There isn't, I meet so many people that touch me in a way, you know, because that they have one problem or another, or that they're just doing things that are really off the wall, but positive, and they're great. I mean, the fans are just always astonish me. They just always amaze me and their knowledge and their interest and their commitment. And you go, oh, wow, these people are just amazing. And it's not as though they're just fans. I mean, they're actually, most of them are doing something that contributes to good stuff rather than, you know, I mean, you were out yesterday, you know, it's the same sort of spirit. It's like you went out yesterday to say, hey guys, you got to stop this stuff. Yeah. Because this is insanity. We can't live like this. And that's basically the message that's going out. Of course they're deaf, but there you go. You know, they've been deaf for a long time. And when I was a kid, we were out in the streets saying basically the same thing. And it's heart-rendering to know that you guys have got to go back out there and do the same thing all over again. But these guys have lit a fire, you know, and you guys are trying to put it out. And God bless you, you know.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think it's what they say too in Star Wars. You know, it's the fire it's the light that starts the fire that keeps the rebellion burning. It's that whole mindset that, you know, you guys have set the tone. I talk to my dad all the time. He's 76 years old. He was out in the streets in the 60s. He told me those stories of what it was like to do it. And he said, it's your turn now. And that's why I did it. And it's why I talk with so many people in this community, that there's just so much more that we can do, whether we're Star Wars fans, whether we're fans of, I'm going to get into it like I promised, Strange Brew. But, you know, there's just so much that we can do across the board to make sure that we're unified in times when there's so much trying to divide us.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the whole rebel idea. I mean, it's like that. There's a line in one of Leonard Cohen's songs, you know, it's a crack that lets the light in. And it's like, you know, things are broken, but in that break is where the light comes in. So
I think it's fabulous when you see Carrie Fisher's Princess Leia in the women's marches. And there's pictures of her, you know, the eyes of history are on you, and it's Carrie Fisher. That always as you said, Robin, you know, that there's like-minded people in the world, and the things that we like are not all that different, and the things that are important to us resonate in similar ways. So that hits home. And you know, I use the rebel symbol there whenever I'm just so angry to say anything. I just post that. And I say resist. So
resist. Yeah. Let the light in.
That's right. Let it all in. Now, Angus, let me ask you this. I've been teasing it. I'm going to ask it. Strange Brew, I went back. I watched it the other night, and I'm telling you, man, I'm a huge hockey fan, number one. So literally, how did you walk about the role of Rosie LaRose to even begin with?
How did I get it?
Yeah, that in particular.
Well, you know, it's really funny. For sure.
Say what?
You have the Canadian accent. That works.
That helps.
Well, I got that. Yay.
Hoser.
It's really funny because when I was in Florida at the end of February, I met up with David Thomas and Lynn Griffiths, both of whom were. David was the writer and one of the writers, and along with what's his name, and. But I went to an interview. My agent, I was in Toronto at the time, and then my agent said, well, they got this crazy picture that's going on. They want to talk to you. So I go off to this office and I meet these two guys, and Dave Thomas, all he could talk about was Star Wars. I don't even know if we talked about the movie, about Strange Brew much. It was just sort of, oh, well, this is crazy story about these guys. And I didn't, because I was out of the country for quite a long time. I'd only just returned to Canada from the UK. And I didn't really know too much about the Great White North and Dave Thomas and that whole show. And then so suddenly I was cast in it, and it was just one of those real crazy moments where you just go, well, these guys are just nuts. And like, so you just roll with it, because it lets you do things that you really have always wanted to do. I've always I love doing comedy, and I don't get very many chances to do it.
Right.
I've been lucky here in the UK because I've done some comedy with some really nice people, worked with some really good comics. And every time I've done it, it's been exhilarating, because it's like lunacy. Because these guys, a lot of them are working really spontaneously. It's like, okay, we've got to do this. Let's see what happens. But the real magic of Strange Brew was getting to meet and work with Max von Sydow, who I was I mean, he's my idol. I worked with him after that two other occasions, and I just adored the guy. And he was a most wonderful man. He was just so generous and so nice. And he was like a living icon. People talk about people are legends, and it's like, well, what's that mean? But this guy really was a legend, like Lancaster.
Yeah.
Like Burt Lancaster. He was like, for me, he was just this guy who did The Seventh Seal. He was this guy that did Wild Strawberries, he was in The Exorcist, and he made The Exorcist. He was like, and all the movies that he's done, but his work has always been so good. And so I was suddenly standing in the room working with this guy, and I thought, oh my God, what's going on here? So it's like, it's that bit of luck, doing Strange Brew was great fun, and it was really off the wall, but you suddenly got this gem of Max von Sydow working with Max von Sydow, and you go like, my God, I'm doing this foxy weird little movie, but it's got Max von Sydow in it. So right away it gives you a sort of boost and a cachet that says, now let's not fool around, because we got Max is in this movie.
Right.
He gives you that gravitas that says, wow, there's a real serious hardball player on this set. Because Max went on to do loads and loads of other movies. After that, great films, wow. It was wonderful, just breathtaking to work with him. Just like, I'm not really good at being starstruck either. Can you see me? Am I that as dark as I think I am?
You look great. We're talking Burt Lancaster and Max von Sydow, and you look the part.
It's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful.
I don't know if that helps.
It does, Angus.
There we go.
But I do have to ask you, because from our generation, working with someone like Harrison Ford, you've done that three times. Force 10, Star Wars, and Witness.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you ever have any personal interactions with him? And what's he like to watch work? Is that like a Lancaster, or is it different?
It was funny, because Harrison was when I only met him on Star Wars, very, very, if at all. We were in one scene, he was on the other side of the room. It was really, really tentative. But then on Force 10 from Navarone, I spent like 4 or 5, 6 months with him, and because I'm a bit younger than him, not a lot, but I'm 3 or 4 years younger than him, but we were sort of like minds, and we spent a lot of time together on Force 10. And then, of course, Witness came along, and he was largely responsible for me being in that. So I've got a lot to thank him for. And he's an unusual actor, because he's not consumed by himself.
Right.
Oh, really? Okay, that's good to hear. That's
no. There's a lot of people who are. I've met a few that aren't, and I met a lot that are, and I find it's wearing when somebody is consumed by themselves.
Mm-hmm.
It drains your energy. Where somebody who isn't, you suddenly think, I'm working with this person.
Right.
You know, and I've always had an attitude. I made a mental note when I was very, very young that I would never say that I was working for somebody. Like I would never say I'm working for this director or that director. I'm always working with them, because the idea is that we are all part of the creative process. We all contribute a little bit. The carpenter contributes something.
Mm-hmm.
Makeup artists contribute a lot. Wardrobe contribute. Everybody contributes to making movies. You can't make a movie all by yourself. Nobody can. So I met young directors. I used to work with some young directors who did short movies in art colleges and film schools. And some of them had the idea that they could make the movie themselves, that they could perform it, that they could be the camera guy, and like, that's a crazy idea. It doesn't work. And the more I tried to explain it to them, the less they seemed to understand. But some people did get on board, and they suddenly realized what the process was. And the process of filmmaking is like any artwork, which is you start building, and you need people in there to say, why don't we do it like this? What happens if we did that? Try this. What happens if I put the light over there?
Yeah.
Changes the whole scene. And it's amazing how that comes together. And it's a wonderful thing. And people like Harrison know that, and they understand that, because I think he spent so many years working and failing. You know, he spent a long time. He was well into his 30s before Star Wars came along, and then another couple of years before, you know, he started getting the kind of roles that he needed, that made him a superstar. So I mean, I got a lot of time for him. He's always been, but he's very, very quiet guy. He doesn't like to talk to people. He doesn't suffer fools, if you know what I mean.
Right.
Well, you seem to be that way. You seem to have a straightforward manner.
Yeah, but I'm happy to talk to people. He isn't.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to take I want to, since you do like to talk to people, what is the hardest thing about any role? You know, whether it's a smaller part or a bigger part. What, as an actor, I'm not an actor. You know, I consider myself more of a writer. What is the hardest piece of the mindset that you have to adopt when you're taking on someone else's persona?
I think it's you first have to get to the point. There's sort of two things you have to do. I found anyway, is that you have to understand what the character's doing within the context of the story. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then 99% of the time in movies, the story is about a person. So there's always a star in it, right? Mm-hmm. Or there's two stars. And everybody else is there to fill that story in. So my role as a supporting actor is to go in with a very clearly defined character that I believe in and that will be truthful, but not try to be the star. Understand my position within crafting that story. I add my little piece of the story to it. And that's another piece of the puzzle. Thank you. Goodbye. That's basically what happens. And it's the people, I met actors who try to be creative, but really what it is showboating, and they wind up not contributing properly. They don't, the work doesn't mesh. So mm-hmm. they get cut out of the movie, and then they moan about it. And my only answer to them would be, well, you got to understand how. It's like making a painting, and if somebody says, I mean, big artists, when they're doing a large painting, they have teams of painters working with them, and people are doing angels or in like a medieval stuff. I mean, Michelangelo stuff. People did the angels, you know, and somebody else did the Cupids, and somebody else did. So I mean, and then the artist himself did the main guy, and that's the way a movie works in a way that, you know, the star is the main guy, and we all fill in. We're the angels and the devils and the peasants and the or whoever fits into that picture.
Right.
You understand what I mean?
Yeah, well, I mean, because if you take that logic and apply it to something like the original Star Wars, one of the reasons I think people love that is that the supporting actors, the pilots, those people who die, you actually care about, but they were playing a role, and that piece of the role was to say, this is very, very hard what they're trying to do. A lot of people died trying to do what they're trying to do, and each of them had their part in trying to do that. And you cared about each of those people. But if one or two of those people tried to make it about them, well, then you take the spotlight away from Mark Hamill, or you take the spotlight away from Harrison Ford. So in the end, it doesn't matter who puts the puck in the net. It's you know, you feed the right person and it works, right?
Yeah, well, we're like the relay runners, you know. I'm maybe the third guy with a baton, but then as we're heading down the straightaway, I hand it over to the next guy, who hands it on to Mark Hamill. You know, it's like that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I mean, and that's one of the things that I've always loved about film is the way it is brought together, the way that the director has got to balance all of the performances and try and get them to meld together so that he's going in one direction and away he goes. And that's a real skill. And then the editor comes in and he shaves a half a minute off of here or a half a second off of there. It changes things. Mm-hmm. And it changes the dynamic. So I mean, everybody has got, the music guy comes in. Wow, that's a whole different ball game all of a sudden. Mm-hmm. It's just everybody contributes their bit. And, you know, a director can't say to a composer, I want this kind of, well, he'll say, I want, you know, an exciting sort of opening or whatever. I mean, he'll describe what he wants, but he's not going to say, you got too many notes or, you know,
hand me the damn batons and let me do it myself. That whole attitude. Yeah.
You know, it's like, I guess Kubrick got away with it because apparently on 2001, he had a whole score man, an orchestra, and he turned around and he chucked it all in the bin and he turned to some records and he put the records on. I mean, like, unbelievable.
Right.
But hey, that was Kubrick. So I mean, it doesn't happen very often. But everybody does. But even the guys that played on those records, they got to put, you know, they had some input. However you cut it, you know, but it's a really odd process, and it's very, very, very complicated. I mean, and it's getting more and more complicated. I haven't worked for a few years now, and I look at the credit rolls on some of the more recent movies, and it's breathtaking. You're talking about, I mean, I used to make a movie with maybe 300 people or so would make a movie. There's 2,000 people credited in the movies today.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, there's CGI people, and that team is like 20 or 30 or 40 long, and then you got this, and you got that, and you got, you know, armors. You've got I mean, it's just amazing.
Yeah.
If you had to break it down to brass tacks, and you were going to watch a couple, 3 movies, and someone said, Angus, let's watch your favorites. And it maybe spoke to a little bit about what you're talking about, the craft of making movies, the craft of acting. Is there any couple that you could assign us to watch? And when we call you again next year, we can talk about them. I mean, what do you watch? What does an actor watch when they want to watch good movies?
Oh, that's really hard because I don't watch that many movies. I find it, sometimes I find it really difficult to watch films because I think it's probably, I'm just so damn jealous other people are working that I can't bear to watch them work.
That's fair. Been there.
But, I get tired of seeing things that are the same. You know, there's an awful lot of cops and robbers out there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And every time I turn around, whether it's television or, you know, if it's involving some cop who's like got a messed up personal life and he's just recovering from his cocaine addiction and suddenly he's going to retire and now he's got his big case. Well, I mean, it's the same story over and over again. I want to see something that's fresh and that's brought to you with So I'm actually starting to re-examine and started to look at films that I want to see. There's some movies that I haven't seen. I haven't seen Buster Keaton's The General, for instance, 1923 or something. And I want to watch that movie. And I want to go back and look at things that, there's some press guys have got some, they've been putting out some compilations of what they think. And I go, oh yeah, I haven't seen that, or I haven't seen that in a long time. I'm going to do some catching up. And then, so if we do talk a year, I'll be able to tell you what I caught up on and what's really interesting.
Right.
Well, I have one to recommend if you haven't seen it. It's the Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it speaks to a time that you actually lived and being on movie and TV sets and stuff like. I would love to know what you thought of that picture.
Okay.
Not necessarily the violence of the ending of it or anything like that, but what it was like to be on movies before big budget became big budget. And that's essentially, the main character is a main character on one of those old cowboy shows, and he goes through the issue of having to realize that he's not, Steve McQueen, and it's very poignant, and I would recommend it if you have a second. I will check it out because I have heard of it, and I want to catch it. There's a couple of things that, one picture that I really want to see is Seven Psychopaths. I keep missing it, and yeah, it's this Chris Walken movie. It's about these guys in Los Angeles who kidnap stars' pet dogs. It's a bizarre movie. It's got a whole whack of great people in it. But I want to catch that. It's a very dark comedy. And apparently hideously violent. So there you go.
That's amazing. No,
did you happen to see the latest Star Wars?
I haven't seen all of it. I've seen bits, so I'm not going to comment on it yet.
Okay, all right.
Because I haven't digested the whole thing yet. I think you have to digest it before I'm going to open my mouth.
Robin, I interrupted you. What were you going to ask? No, I just want to personally say thank you to Angus in terms of discussing the creative process. That's where I've always come with my love of film. Again, I'm going to reference my dad here. He went to art school. He worked with a lot of young producers in New York City when he was starting his marketing projects. And the one thing he always told me, and one thing that I stick true to today, is that film is an art form. If you're not able to do something that people have not seen yet, or take elements of things that in its pure artistic form can drag somebody into a story, I don't know if I have an interest in viewing it. I'm not sure if I have that kind of taste for it. And I want to thank you for bringing that up, because I think a lot of people, there's a lot of the same around us. And then when something really different, artistic and unique pops up, it immediately grabs our attention. And we're like, why don't we see more of this? So that conversation is something that I think has to happen across the board. We have so many great, talented individuals out there that we could really build that as we move forward in the film industry too.
Well, I think is really, really fascinating is the way that the film industry is changing because of streaming.
Right.
Because of Netflix and Disney and Apple and everybody else is getting into the game. They're going to, now there was a very interesting article today in one of the newspapers here, and they're saying, is this the end of the blockbuster? I mean, if you can't go to a movie house and see a movie because you can only show it to 50 people, because they got to be like 9 yards apart and they have to be wearing masks and goggles. And I mean, who's going to go to see a live movie in a movie house? Why would you bother? And already they compared it to what happened in the 30s when the Great Depression happened. How the audiences went from like 85 million to 55 million in like just a few months, and then over 2,000 movie houses closed. And if that happens here, well, what happens? They're going to take up the slack. People are going to buy 100-inch television sets and huge sound bars and surround sound deals, and they're going to turn their houses into cinemas, and they're going to be watching everything that is being released now is being streamed on Amazon, on Netflix. It's amazing. So I think that we're looking at a kind of weird revolution. We're already looking at a revolution in filmmaking because of digital. Right. I mean, kids have got high-end cameras.
Yeah.
I mean, people are walking around with, they only cost like $3,000 or $4,000, and you get a really good camera.
Yeah.
And you can shoot a feature on the damn thing. I mean, it's amazing what can be done.
Yeah.
And you're getting and because of streaming, we're seeing stuff from Iceland, we're seeing stuff from Romania or Iran, China, Japan, Korea. I mean, suddenly we're getting, and if you're willing to put up with subtitles and things, you're seeing all kinds of, I mean, a South Korean movie won Best Movie this year.
Right.
That's the sign of the times.
Do you want to get in on that action? Are you itching to get back in front of a camera based on that?
I'd love to work. I love working. I just love working. But I mean, it's difficult right now, but I mean, who knows what's going to happen in this transition? And besides, they're using more and more CGI. And I think the work that, if any work that I do in the future, is probably going to be small movies, short movies, maybe shorts, whatever. And I live in Scotland, so I'm not exactly traveling all over the world to shoot movies right now. So, hey, that's okay. I've done some nice work. I'm very pleased with having done it, and I would work tomorrow. But I'm not going to do the kind of work that I could do.
Yeah.
This is not making any sense. I'm babbling again.
It actually makes a lot more sense than in most things we're seeing these days.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. No, but I mean, I think the beauty, and I want to thank you for coming onto the show in particular, because these are the conversations that we love to have, John and myself, here on Chat Sessions. It is just an honor to have you on here, and we look forward to having chats with you.
You guys deserve it. Listen, I mean, you're putting out yourselves and you're putting out your time, and if you're letting people have a chat with, and that's great. And if somebody watches it, terrific. And at least you're not sitting on your butt, wondering what happened. You're doing something about it. You're getting involved. That's good.
I appreciate that.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. So we'll catch you very soon, my friend. Again, thank you so much for coming onto the show.
Great pleasure.
Angus,
I hope I see you all soon. I hope we can get back on the road and I'll get over to the States and we'll say hello and face to face.
Oh man,
mask to mask.
I would. That would be really awesome to run into Gold Leader, in person at some point, and then at least be able to share a laugh.
We look forward.
Okay, John.
See you later.
Okay, see you later. Now, have a nice time. Have a good evening.
You too.
Bye-bye.
So, John, that was our chat there with Mr. Angus MacInnes himself. What a chat with the man himself.
I am just blown away at how warm the man was and how much time he had to give to us. And I came away understanding acting and film a lot more in terms of somebody who's been there and seen it change. And I knew there was a reason he was one of my favorite characters, and everything that he said tonight and the way he treated us with so much respect makes me think I was right.
Yeah. There's just so much great stuff about Angus. I mean, just having that opportunity to speak with him and have you guys watch it and listen to it is just absolutely amazing. In a time, like he said, we don't know what's going to be coming up down the road here. Just the opportunity to sit down, have a face-to-face conversation, and also get to know a little bit more about him. Like I had that question lined up about some of his more goofier type filming that he's been working on in the past there. But it's so great just to hear that creative process, like I said there. It is really cool to hear that from him.
I mean, he worked with Burt Lancaster, Jimmy Caan, and Harrison Ford, and that wasn't it.
Yeah.
you know, and the humility and the amount of time he gave to just chat, that was pretty spectacular. So I'm not sure how we can top that, but we're going to try next week, aren't we?
Oh, you know, we're going to top it off, and everybody's going to love what we got. And hopefully this voice here is a little bit better than where it is today. But
well, it makes you sound more distinguished.
And there we go. I love it. I love it. Anyway, let's wrap up this podcast here. John, it's a little thing here on the video version and, of course, on the audio that people will be hearing, but it's our favorite time of the show. It's a little thing that we like to call plug time here at the Brick City Blockade chat sessions. John, where can the good people find you across social media?
Always mickeyblog.com, where, you know, all of my compatriots are trying to keep up with everything Disney, and in my world I tend to have the Star Wars and a lot of the Marvel stuff. We got a lot of interesting things that have been happening over the last couple of weeks based on the number of anniversaries and the possibility of some new Star Wars video games.
Yeah.
I fully expect that we're going to have some more news on any number of different shows. The latest we heard about was possibly that Thrawn and Ezra might be coming back into a live action situation. I wrote about that last night. I think that's a long shot, but hey, I'll take the long shot. The thing that I'll plug this week is that I finished up Queen's Shadow.
Ooh, nice.
Which was really good, and I believe I have the Star Wars Show book club to back me up on that, so I'll do a little bit of a review. And I'm currently reading Alphabet Squadron, which is just spectacular. So, you know, the nice thing about Star Wars is that there's so much to be had, and it can keep you centered on one wonderful, fun thing while you're not having to worry about masks and, you know, yard work and all that wonderful junk. So I recommend those two novels right now, and whatever you got going on, Robin. What's going on for us?
Similar thing, man. I'm just going to keep it local here at Mr. Vote Tweets, of course, on Twitter, Brick City Blockade at Brick City SWPC. We're going to be doing a lot more Starlight Children's Foundation. There's a lot going on right now. A lot of families need some support for their children during this time in hospitals, and in particular, whether they're out of a job, whether they just need the money to help with medical expenses. So make sure to check that out. Brick City Blockade will be doing more with that. Myself, I just staying active, man. This is a very challenging time for a lot of us. It's testing a lot of our limits, but I always say to people that are out there, if you can find your part, like Angus does, if you can find your part in the galaxy and you can help out in some way, do it safely, do it respectfully, and we will get through this all together. I think that's the most important message we got. So,
well, at least you and I will be together, my friend. This is
that's all that matters.
We're on a roll here. Let's keep it going.
Yeah, you know it. And you guys make sure to keep subscribing, keep listening, keep sharing, doing the amazing things that you do. But hey, until next time, here at the Brick City Blockade, for John Bishop, this is Robin Vote signing off, and we'll catch you guys next time. May the Force be with you always.